Alan Saunders of Pittsburgh Now joins us to break down the Pittsburgh draft picks on JetCast. What's going on, Jeff fans? As always, it's Ray here with my partner, Pat. Today, we are joined by Alan Saunders, who writes for Pittsburgh Now and covers all Pittsburgh football, anywhere from Pittsburgh to the Steelers. He's been everywhere. And we wanted to bring him in for you guys to help break down our fourth and fifth round draft picks this year. In the fourth round, let's start it off really quick. We drafted Carter Warren, the 4-year starter out of Pitt. A lot of high upside on this pick. We know this pick came from New England, so hopefully it comes back to haunt them. So, Alan, why don't you start off really quickly and give us some of your pros when it comes to Carter Warren transitioning into the NFL?
I think Carter's a really good pass protector. I think, and he's really experienced. So I think if you're looking at a guy who's like a younger prospect, like for example, like the Steelers got Broderick Jones in the first round, a guy that I think a lot of people were thinking the Jets were maybe going to be able to get with that pick. Like he's a guy that has a lot of upside, a lot of athletic potential, but he has a lot more to work on, right? I just think Carter Warren is a very advanced college prospect, maybe sacrificing some of the upside of those top of the draft class guys. But in terms of pass protection, really good hands, really moves pretty well for a guy his size, like laterally especially, I think, and is just a really experienced veteran guy that's done it a lot and was really like the one guy on that line that was a very, very dependable pass protector, was really responsible for keeping Kenny Pickett upright and being the sort of rock on a line that was kind of shaky other than him in terms of pass protection for most of the time that he was there. So, I mean, I think he's coming off a big knee injury, missed the whole second half of last season, wasn't able to participate in the pre-draft process. So I think that depressed his stock a little bit. He's a guy I thought could have gone higher. But I like, the fit, and I think he's a guy that could fit in as if you're trying to develop a left tackle, I think he's a guy that fits pretty well.
Yeah, he's the kind of guy that I think if he came out last year, or the year prior, right, he was projected somewhere around the second round, but he went back to school, ended up getting hurt, and he slides, luckily, to us. So, I know you talked a lot about the pass game. What about the run game?
So I think he probably could get a little bit stronger for his size. He's not like a guy that moves people, in the run game. I think he's technically proficient. I just think that's probably the area where, like, physically he's not up to the standard of some of those like first round guys. Like he's not a guy that you're going to see like finish run plays with guys on their back. That's not. He's more like a technician than a super physical guy. I think if he got a little bit stronger, he could be like a dependable kind of hold the fort down kind of guy where he can take up space and not get driven backwards. But I don't think he's ever going to be a guy that's just like, he's not that super aggressive run blocker type. He's more of a technical guy that can block guys, but he's not, I wouldn't call a dominant run blocker. I do think he can get better than what he is, and I think he definitely can get stronger. He's even like he carries his weight really, really well. He's long. He's got long arms, and he doesn't look big. You see offensive linemen. Some of them have like a big belly on them, or these like big, huge tree trunk legs where you're like, oh, that guy's just weighs a ton. Like Carter's, pretty nimble looking guy. I think he could get a little bit bigger and stronger, and maybe add to his run blocking prowess as he gets older and continues to develop.
Now, one thing we saw in college with him is the penalties. 11 penalties in 15 games. That's something that scouts say he's absolutely going to have to work on. Now, are those the penalties that he is committing? Are those fixable? Is it technique-wise? Is it he's just getting overpowered by outside rushers? What do you think what's the biggest concern for him transitioning into the NFL level for you?
I think it's probably, a combination of a bunch of things. Like I said, the pit line wasn't that good, and I think a lot of times he was trying to probably like do a little bit too much, where like things like he kind of felt like like if he didn't block his guy, then nobody else is going to block their guy. And the offensive line needs to be a collective position. You have to have faith that if you're the one guy that misses your block, that the other four got theirs, and the play can still go through. You don't have to hold a guy, right? Like, not every play needs to be a win for every offensive lineman for the offense to move forward. But I think he got into this little trap where he was clearly Pitt's best offensive lineman, and I think he felt like if he didn't get his block, he had to bring that guy down because everything was going to fall apart if he didn't. So I think it'll just be like, it's a little bit maturity. And I think it's just a little bit like getting into a better team situation where if he can be I think he would be better served where he's the worst offensive lineman here. It's like, okay, we're not counting on you to do everything. Just do your job. And look, hey, if you miss some blocks, you miss some blocks. That's okay. Like there's obviously the Jets have a really talented, you got like Elijah Vera-Tucker maybe playing next to him. Like, that can absorb a lot of mistakes that I don't think he had the ability to absorb with Pitt. He also had a high number of false starts, and I don't really know what to attribute that to. It's hard to say why that is a thing that happened. So I don't really know how to go about diagnosing that one.
Can you elaborate a little bit on his knee injury and whether you think he'll be ready to go by camp?
Yeah, meniscus injury that seemed pretty major. He was, in the full like leg brace kind of deal. Had surgery on it. Was not able to run in the pre-draft process. The thing to me, I think you worry about as a bigger guy. Anytime you have a bigger athlete and you have an injury to their lower half, you worry about them being off their feet for that amount of time. When I saw him at the combine, he looked like he was in good shape. So I'm not worried about that part of it. It's just keeping. Getting himself back to that explosiveness and being able to fully participate. I don't know if he'll be 100% full go this spring, like OTAs wise, but I would think that by training camp he should be ready to go.
Okay, now let's get into my favorite pick, or I would say the most exciting pick. I would say as a Jet fan, because when you see a 40 time like Izzy ran, the running back out of Pittsburgh. What was it in his pro day? 4.26, 4.27, something crazy like that. I mean, you don't see this kind of speed in the fifth round. Now I understand people are gonna say, well, he doesn't break a ton of tackles. He's the kind of guy for us Jet fans that we have lacked for such a long period of time. Yes, I love Michael Carter, but he's not a home run threat. I like Ty Johnson. I like Bam Knight. We traded for James Robinson. What do they all have in common? They all get caught by the guys in the secondary. Explain to Jet fans why Izzy is not the prototypical back and talk about that home run speed.
He's not a prototypical back for any team, not just the Jets. He is an extremely unique player. I've been doing this a long time. I don't think I've ever covered personally another running back like Izzy Abanikanda. Came out of Brooklyn, Abraham Lincoln High School, is a multi-sport guy, right? He was a track athlete and a football player. He had legitimate, like all-state type track speed. So if you're doing that in a place like New York, then you're real fast. And he does it at a size. I think that is the shocking thing to me is that, I met Izzy. He had just committed to Pitt. So I guess it was probably like during his senior year of high school. And, I meet him there in the guidance counselor's office, and he walks in the door and I'm like, oh, you guys got the wrong guy. I'm here for this track star running back. It can't be this muscled up 215-pound guy you're sending into the room. It's just so rare to me to find a running back with his combination of size and speed that it just doesn't happen where you have guys that are built like that are that fast. He's not like a crazy tackle breaker. He's not that, but he is just unbelievably quick and an extremely decisive runner. I think that is the thing. There's also this sort of track star tendency where you'll see these guys that have these eye-popping 40 times, but then you see them on the field and it's a lot of dancing and it's a lot of lateral movement, which can lead to negative plays, especially if you're a team that has questions with the offensive line. And I think the thing about Izzy is that it's just one cut, go. He has great vision, and he can turn a well-blocked play into a touchdown from any part of the field. Really, truly elite speed at the running back position. And I think brings a lot of good things to the table. Not a complete back, like parts of the game that are still very much a work in progress. But in terms of the ball carrying, just the pure rushing ability, man, he's definitely got to be excited about.
What part of his game do you think he needs to work on the most?
The thing that always held him back at Pitt was pass protection. I would not say he's like a bad pass protector, but it's certainly not a strength. And I think a lot of times, if you look at speed guys, they kind of get pigeonholed into that, okay, he's going to be a third down back role. And I don't think he really fits that because he's not a great pass protector. And I wouldn't say he's an exceptional receiver either, probably more like average in terms of receiving ability. And so I think it made it a little bit difficult for some teams to say, okay, where does this guy fit into our offense? I thought that he would probably go in general. I kind of thought like late day 2, early day 3, but then there was a run on running backs in the 3rd round of this draft. And there were a number of players that I thought are not as good of a prospect that went ahead of him during that little run. And I was a little surprised to see him fall into the Jets when he did. And so I think that's part of the reason is this just, he doesn't fit the sort of comfortable, reliable paradigm of like, oh, this is our bigger first down back, this is our smaller, quicker third down back. He's different, right? And so I think that maybe made it a little bit harder for teams to see a fit in him. But he is super explosive, good with the ball in his hands. There's not a whole lot of downside. Had a couple fumbles, but nothing I think is like a huge issue. I just think mostly just the pass protection is the one thing that I would say is probably below average at. But man, like to me, I think his absolute best situation was to go to somewhere where they have another running back and he can be like a really, really high level 1B or change of pace kind of guy, where if you start to wear a team down and then you bring him in as the second guy, he's going to start breaking off big runs.
Now, a lot of Jet fans are really concerned that Breece Hall's not going to be ready the first couple of weeks. He might even get that short-term IR, whatever the PUP list, the first 4 weeks off. Is he that kind of guy? Is he ready to step into an NFL situation? Because I don't think the Jets view Michael Carter as an every down back. He's a predominantly third down back. He's very good at pass blocking. He's an okay receiver. He makes the first guy miss, doesn't have the home run speed. And we all know in this offense, especially last year when we were watching Breece Hall, they love those game breakers back there. So is he the kind of back that he will absorb this playbook and be able to start week 1 as a starter? Maybe he'll be splitting a little bit more with Bam Knight in the backfield, but I could see him getting 60% of the snaps. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think 3 things here to me really are the key that make me think that he can be a guy that can contribute right away. The first one is he did it at Pitt, right? He walked right in as a 3-star recruit freshman and played his freshman year for Pat Narduzzi, who is as old school of a head coach as you're going to find in today's college football, who just does not just hand playing time to freshmen. He's a super mature guy. He's a smart guy. He's going to pick up the offense fast. And so I think that all leads to him being, a good option day one. The second part is, he is very similar in a lot of ways to Breece Hall. So, I don't think the Jets would have to change anything about their offense to just put him in there, same kind of pieces in a lot of ways. And that if it's a play designed to maximize Breece Hall's ability, it's probably going to work for Izzy just fine. They don't have to do anything different to get him in there. And then I think the third thing to me is that Pitt runs a pro style offense. It's not like you're taking a guy from, like this air raid or a weird triple option where, it's a projection from what they did in college to what you're going to be asking them to do in the pros. Pitt runs an offense. I'm not like super familiar with what the Jets are running on a day-to-day basis, but like it's Mark Whipple. It's all pro style stuff that most NFL teams are running a lot. I mean, we've seen Pitt players come out of that scheme and go straight into the NFL, including Kenny Pickett last year, and pick it up pretty quickly. So I think there's a lot of reasons to think that he could be a pretty early contributor.
How green would you say the line was at Pitt for him? I know you were talking about the level of talent on the line when we were talking about Warren. How much of that line really affected his abilities at Pitt?
So I don't know that I would call it green. I just think it's a line that lacked a lot of upside, right? You just had a lot of guys, especially in terms of like pass protection, like, they were downright bad. Pickett's senior year, there was real. I mean, Warden was kind of the one guy holding the fort, keeping Kenny, alive back there. They were a better run blocking line than they were a pass blocking line.
Okay.
I don't want to say that they held Izzy back like significantly, just because I think he's a pretty good bad blocking running back, if that makes sense. Like, a guy who had more of that dance in his game, or a little more lateral movement, I think would be a guy that would be more impacted, by a guy missing a block. Izzy, I think, is pretty good at, if it's only blocked for 3 yards, okay, he's going to get at least a 3. Maybe he breaks the tackle, maybe moves the power forward. But he was pretty good at minimizing negative plays. So I don't think it really hurt him that much. But I mean, if you look at the Pitt team, look at who they've had drafted in the last 3 classes under Pat Narduzzi. It's a lot of defensive linemen, it's a lot of defensive backs. They got some running backs in the league, and there's not too many offensive linemen, right? I mean, that was just not that good. Carter is there. They had Jimmy Morrissey was a center, was a 7th round pick a few years ago, and I think before that you have to go all the way to Brian O'Neill in 2016. So it's just not been. 2018, but it's just not been a group that has been above average for Pitt for a while. So I mean, it probably held him back a little bit, but I think Izzy specifically did a pretty good job of minimizing how much they impacted him.
All right, Alan, we appreciate you coming on JetCast. Where can people find you?
Yeah, I mean, SteelersNow.com for the Steelers side of things, Pittsburgh Sports Now for Pitt and everything else, Pittsburgh football. And you can find me on Twitter at @Saunders_PGH.
Sweet. We appreciate you coming on and breaking down those picks with us. As always, Jeff fans, we have our show coming up on Wednesday. We have a great guest that's going to be coming from the University of Wisconsin to break down the Joe Tippmann pick. On the Wednesday show, I won't be there, but we have a special co-host that's going to be hosting that show. And then, as always, we'll be back next Friday with our next episode.